The appointed hour, we'll call the Stark County Land Realization Corporation Board meeting to order. It's 8:30 a.m. on Monday, July 21st, 2014. We have roll call.
Alex Zumbar,
Present.
Lem Green,
Here.
Janet Creighton,
Here.
Tom Burnaby.
Here.
Okay, in regard to our minutes of June 16th, 2014, regular meeting.
I move we approve them.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of said motion say aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Motion carries. Before I read the treasurer's report, I did receive a notice from our secretary slash treasurer effective June 23rd, 2014. Jamie had submitted to us her resignation notice, and as such, I asked the board to approve her resignation.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of said motion say aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Motion carries. On board. I do have with us presently Mr. Jim Wallace. Jim is a CPA, and he does work in my office part-time. He has picked and assumed duties in which Ms. Albritton was handling for us. He has prepared the bank reconciliation, and I have attached that into your packet. As you can see, our balance is $217,883.89. However, we do have $1 million that has been moved into an investment fund, which is with Star Plus Ohio. So really, we have $1,217,883.89. But $1 million is in investments. Any questions on the reconciliation?
Aggregate net accrued interest $5.
Hey.
Not $1 million.
Oh.
I'm not saying that critically. I'm just reflecting on the
That's only for a couple
sorry
days.
state of.
For a couple days, yeah. I would move to approve the treasurer's report.
It's been moved and seconded. All those, any discussion? All those in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against, same sign. Motion carries. I'd like to introduce Beth Pearson. Beth, you had prepared a document for the board's consideration.
Yes.
So would you like to address the board in regard to this now?
Okay.
Yeah.
We were requested to prepare a draft sort of policies and procedures for your review if we were to, the RPC were to undertake the financial management and secretarial duties of the SCLRC. And those were included in your package. And it contains things such as preparing an annual budget for the board, contracting work and handling the finances, processing of payments and receiving of funds. And with regard to processing of payments and receiving of funds, we would be approving payments but not actually issuing checks. That would still be the responsibility of the SCLRC. With the exception of side lot application fees, all of the other funding would go directly to the land bank. We would propose that the application for the side lot fee be submitted here, and then we would actually then receipt that into our accounting system, but then send those checks directly to the SCLRC for deposit into the bank. And we would also then be proposing to prepare financial statements that would be able to be balanced with the SCLRC books, and then provide secretarial duties as requested. That's just, a very brief overview. If there's any particular questions, I'd be happy to respond to those. Again, these are draft policies or procedures. We would put together a more detailed procedure manual if this is the route that the board would propose to go.
If we resolve to pass this plan, what do you have a recommendation for us as to what number should go in the blanks with respect to routine and minor stuff?
No, I don't at this point. One of the questions that we had posed when we met with Alex was whether or not the board would fall under what they call the super circular now, the 2 CFR Part 200, which details some of those numbers for you. Very similar to the cost accounting principles from the old A110 and A122 circulars.
I don't know what
That
the
can
circulars
act,
are.
those are the federal circulars that
Yeah.
require. and
But I don't know what the.
Yeah, I don't know what
For
those
non-
are.
Yeah,
nonprofits.
okay.
Yeah, as far as nonprofits go, at the RPC here, our limits on purchase order approval and contract approval are up to $1,500. The director can sign between $1,500 and $2,500. Requires the signature of the director and the chair of the RPC. And then after that, anything over that requires approval of the full board. Those are just the numbers that we utilize. We would be very comfortable with those numbers. I know that you work with higher dollar amounts, so you may want to think things a little bit higher. But we were leaving those up to the board.
If I could just add, I think this is modeled somewhat on our administration of the CDBG program for the county commissioners, where we've got some budgeting and planning duties, but the actual check writing and all that still stays with the treasurer's office, and obviously the investments and all that. We're not really, quite frankly, equipped to do that, but I think we can do the other part of it.
Actually, Bob, it stays with Alex, not with the treasurer's office.
Yeah.
He does that in his
You're right.
capacity
I
as
was looking at
chairman.
Alex,
Yeah,
so
okay.
that's, okay, right.
And the cost of performing these services, do these fit within then the administrative contract services, or how do we
Yeah, we're
cost
kind
out
of
these
blowing that out of the
services?
water at this point, to be frank. You know, with the initial, I was doing the neighborhood initiative program. If, just since you brought it up, the 2 invoices, April and May, those, we've broken it down for Moving Ohio Forward. Those are Moving Ohio Forward expenses, which should be, by the end of the summer, kind of running its course. The general administrative duties that we have, that's a quarterly billing, Tom, and I asked Linda to look at that, works with Beth. And June totaled out at about $12,000 for the month. And our contract, initially, before we're taking over the neighborhood initiative program, and presumably this, was $10,000 a month. So we'll have to talk about that. You know, it's already going over a little bit.
How much of that is due to the side lot program that you've undertaken?
Probably almost 100% of her time, to be honest with you.
But in bucks, I'm looking at RPC April invoice 5,900.
Those are actually, that's strictly Moving Ohio Forward.
Okay.
We broke down 2 different billing accounts. The Moving Ohio Forward is what is going to be done by the end of the summer. It was supposed to be done at the end of May, and the Attorney General granted the 3-month extension. Our billing for the general administrative duties for the land bank is a quarterly billing, and again, that's not on here because the quarter's not up, but I asked the fiscal folks to total June, and it was in the range of $12,000, and we had, our contract's $10,000 a month. You know, and again, that was executed before the change with the neighborhood initiative program, and then, you know, some of the fiscal stuff, which hasn't really started yet, but.
Are we looking forward to refunds of some of that from the Moving Ohio Forward? And is that included in the administrative fees that we're allowed out of that?
You receive a portion,
I
but
don't know the answer.
it's a very small amount. I think
Well, how about for NIP? They're gonna reimburse us quite a lot, aren't they?
Well, that's on a project-specific basis. It's up to $25,000 per property. But those reimbursements will come once the demos are completed. But no, it's been, Lynn's on vacation today, or she would be here. But Sarah's been spending most of her time on the side lot program, and Lynn has really been working hard on it. Dave Thorley's been really working with the treasurer's office. and the prosecutor's office.
Let me jump ahead a little bit. We're sitting here right now without a treasurer. Are we going to address that later in the meeting, or year's end?
Well, the functions would be picked up by RPC.
That's what this contract is.
Well, I understand that, but this doesn't specifically designate, are we going to go without a named treasurer, without a designated treasurer?
As secretary as well. It's all handled by the administrative arm.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can be the secretary as named, and we're set up to do that, but to be the named treasurer with the requisite
Well, that would be
duties,
questionable
we're not
because-
really set up, because we
Right.
can't write checks, and we're not set up to do investments.
The checks are still handled by me,
Yeah.
and you have been added as a co-signer,
Right.
Lem. So the two signatures will be on the checks, and we can still process things.
Is there any reason we should delay in acting on this?
Right. And how does this then interrelate with the subject that we started to discuss last month with regard to, appointing a fiscal agent?
The fiscal agent piece, Beth is the fiscal agent for RPC in terms of handling these arrangements. I believe RPC is very capable of handling them. Really, the checks and things of that nature that we're processing now, the board's approving everything, so we have approval on that piece. If we need a treasurer, if you want to name a treasurer, that's up to the board's ultimate decision, but I'm fine with the arrangements that RPC have proposed, and I'm willing to support them.
You might check our bylaws. Do you happen to know, Dave, do our bylaws set forth that we will have a treasurer? It would be easily amended, I assume, but...
I can go get them and reread them, but I don't think that they do specify that you will have a treasurer.
I personally am comfortable with regional planning. It's just,
Why don't we, though, if we could, I'm comfortable with regional planning, but can you do a quick read or quick look of the bylaws? I don't have the bylaws with me today just to see whether or not there's any
Yeah, we can come back
conflict
next
in the
meeting.
direction that
and-
we're going, or even take a look at it right now during the course of the meeting. I don't know, David, if you want to. I mean, probably the treasurer section is one paragraph. Just to see it.
Well, assuming that there is no reason for us to defer, then I would propose that we make the minor amounts here $1,500, fill in each of the 5 blanks. That strikes me as rational. There seems to be some precedent, at least on what we're told.
What number are you recommending, Alex? for
$1,500.
that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you have a recommendation? I mean, you're the one that sees the checks on a more regular
1,500 is
basis than
fine.
we do.
$1,500 is fine. We've come back to the board for amounts. I think this will catch a lot of the smaller things which are coming through. I don't think the board needs to approve a refund of $100 to somebody that didn't qualify for the program, but they sent their check in.
And as we go into this further down the road, we may come back and address it and modify it again if we feel it's far RPC's recommendation.
In the grand scheme of things, this is kind of trivial, but I think we need to consider putting another signature on the thing, because, for instance, next month, I'm going to ask the board to give me $138 or something like that. I want to go to Columbus in October to the land bank meeting, but I don't want to sign that check.
Oh, so you need
You see,
that.
that's all I'm thinking about.
you know,
Would you like to appoint Jim Wallace? If Jim's willing?
Yeah, I move we give signature authority to Jim.
Okay. It's
Second.
been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of said motion say aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Motion carries.
What do we propose to adopt as the regional planning financial management substitute duties of the policy? Do we need
Let's-
to fill in some blanks in on paragraph 2 also?
Let's defer that, though, until Dave...
Till Dave looks.
Dave has
Yeah.
looked at the bylaws.
Okay. What about some blanks on paragraph 2 while we're sitting here?
Officers are listed here, and secretary, treasurer, one or more vice presidents, and duties over here.
On contracts, I would suggest we raise that more than $1,500. Our contracts are generally
the bidding.
For bidding, yeah, you're looking at 25 to 50,000.
What was the?
I think they raised, Dave, is the public bidding about 50,000?
It is 50,000.
Well, yeah, we should stay uniform
With what the
with
county.
what the, yeah, with the accounting.
So then the first page, minor revisions of up to
$1,500.
$1,500
Those are for
budget.
budget. That's if we're changing the budget.
Modifying the budget.
Modifying the budget. Bids or proposals for contracts of $50,000. Our chairman can approve and sign contracts up to $50,000, is that what I understand there?
That would be the authority, but I would recommend you put 25,000 there. In fact, I might even suggest maybe 10. I think that,
Yeah.
because the contracts for the demolition are coming in at 10,000. So 10 or 15,000 there might be a fair number.
So the first blank is going to be 50,000.
First blank would be 50 in section 2, and 15,000 should cover it, Bob. I know the asbestos is what's coming in higher than everything.
Well, under the neighborhood initiative program, all the costs included are it's up to 25.
So 25 might be the better number.
That might, I mean, if you're comfortable with it.
50, 25, and then for finances, routine checks up to, are we back to 1,500?
I'd say 1,500 there,
Yeah.
and payments in excess of 1,500 should be approved.
And David, your read of the bylaws.
In accordance with Article 6 of your Code of Regulations, you actually do appoint officers. These officers consist of a president, a secretary, a treasurer, and one or more vice presidents, and that's pursuant to Section 6.1. Then under Section 6.3, it actually talks about duties, and under section that's specific to the treasurer, which is 6.3.2, the treasurer shall be the fiscal officer of the corporation. Subject to the direction of the president, the treasurer shall be responsible for all fiscal affairs of the corporation. And then has a long section of including but not limited to duties. So it does require that you have a treasurer.
Well, can you propose specific revisions to our bylaws, Dave? Is that something that we can turn to you for appropriately?
I'm sorry?
Can you propose specific amendments to the bylaws to resolve that matter?
Sure. I could work on something and have back to you for your next meeting.
Well, I mean, I think the way we're set up is a little bit different than most of the other land banks. Most of them have hired staff where you have a president and a treasurer and a secretary. We have a contractual relationship, which functionally is the same thing. And if we need to look at the bylaws to maybe more accurately reflect what we're doing, I think we can do that.
Sure.
Alternatively, who drafted, did the prosecutor draft these for us?
No.
Okay.
These were
They
coming
came
from
from the-
suggestions from other land
From
banks.
thriving.
Thriving community.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I read Cuyahoga counties, and they're pretty similar. I think it's probably fairly, if not standardized, similar language.
Well, can we properly defer this until we get that revision, or should we pass this and revise our bylaws later?
You can always revise the bylaws. I'm comfortable passing what they've proposed in terms of the budgeting and contracting those functions.
Yeah.
Secretary.
I mean, I think functionally, the regional planning is the director, and we can be the secretary, and if we want to have your gentleman be the treasurer, Jim, I mean, that would, if we need to name somebody, if it,
Why don't we appoint Jim to that?
Yeah.
He's on an interim basis
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
and we'll take a look at this some more.
Jim, you accept it? Would you accept that? Okay, it's been moved,
I second.
seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of appointing Jim Wallace as treasurer, say aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Motion carries. Would you like to adopt
We need
the?
to adopt this.
I would recommend it.
I move that we adopt the, as previously discussed, that we move the SCRPC Financial Management secretarial duties of the SCLRC as presented in the board's packet with the revisions that the blanks in the first page will be filled in with the number 1,500. The second page contracting, the first blank will be $50,000, second blank's $25,000. With respect to paragraph 3, both blanks be filled in with a number 1,500. As revised, I move the adoption of this plan.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of said motion say aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. Our next item will be administrative reports. Bob?
I'll defer to Sarah to talk about moving Ohio forward. And,
Just a little bit. On bottom of page 1 of that document, it also has some blanks in it.
Yeah, he put 1,500.
You put 1,500 in there.
Right,
Yeah,
over.
1,500.
You want a copy of this?
And then
Of your whole
50,
thing?
25,
Yeah.
and 1,500.
But is it just one page?
It's multiple pages. If this and everything.
Well, if you have any left,
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
take one.
I'll just give a little update on the Neighborhood Initiative Program, and then Sarah will talk about moving Ohio forward and the side lot program. I know we talked about this a little bit at our last meeting, and I saw Tom Burns is here. Canton has agreed to and signed the agreement between the land bank and Canton for the Neighborhood Initiative Program. I saw we have representatives from Alliance and Massillon here. We basically sent out an agreement to both of them, which is the same agreement we have with Canton. It's just obviously changing the names. And I think their situation's a little bit different than Canton with respect to resources, funding, and maybe some staffing issues. And certainly they're here, and I won't speak for them, but I think boiling it down is it's kind of a cash flow issue. And with the two cities, also, I know a concern has been expressed. I know, like in Massillon, for instance, some of the demos that we did under Moving Ohio Forward were well over $25,000, and that's under Neighborhood Initiative. That is the maximum reimbursement that's provided. And the question was, hey, if some of these demos go over a little bit, we don't really have the funding to handle that. Is it something the land bank would be willing to do? And then I think the actual capacity to do the demolition is a question. And I don't want to, speak for Massillon or Alliance because I know they're both here. But I think that in a nutshell, those are the big issues that are kind of outstanding that I think the land bank from a public policy standpoint we need to talk about. Because right now, Canton is doing, we have an agreement with them. They're doing their demolition in-house, and they're going to get reimbursed for that. So it's a pretty clear delineation with them. But Massillon Alliance, I think, are a little different.
Since there are representatives from the City of Massillon and City of Alliance, would the board entertain hearing from those representatives?
I think we should.
Mr. Mazzola, would you like to speak on behalf of Alliance or Amelia?
Certainly. I'll now that I'm starting my third month, I may yield to Amelia for some things. But essentially, it's the $25,000. I'm surprised it's not enough because my experience in Cuyahoga County and the hundreds of demolitions we did in the city of East Cleveland, the asbestos, I mean, it tended to be a little pricey, but it still fell within that $25,000. But based upon what I've learned about what's going on in Alliance and most of Stark County, I mean, asbestos is pretty pricey down here, remediation. And with that said, they do come in much higher than $25,000, and it's not simply cash flow; it's cash. If it's not within the $25,000, we would have to rely upon the general fund. And like most municipalities in Ohio, we're pretty stretched. So that's not something we would be able to bear at this point in time. What am I missing here, please?
No, I would agree. I think that it's also important to note that we had a couple Moving Ohio Forward properties, the abatement costs for asbestos came in at $30,000. And that doesn't include, obviously, surveys and demolition. So if you're looking at $25,000 and you're adding the element of acquisition and then 3 years of aftercare, it's really just not going to be possible for the community. That being said, there are certain areas in town that seem to be hotter in asbestos than other areas. Originally, we talked about focusing on those areas where the abatement costs seem to be less money. However, there's really no guarantee, and once you get that far into it, you already have money out. So that was the concern. I had numerous conversations with the mayor and the health commissioner, and we all just kind of look at it as we don't have the general fund to fall back on, so we're concerned that it's going to be over that for quite a few properties, and then you're in $15,000 before you really can pull out.
What money would you have out in that event?
Asbestos surveys, depending on the size of the house, that's a small cost, but if you get the survey back and it's going to be quite a bit of money, you're already also starting kind of the acquisition process. So depending on where that falls, if you've already got the title search, the PJR, that again is costly.
And that's money essentially that you would like us to commit or give a positive attitude towards reimbursing you for in the event that it. I mean, option one is you just simply don't do the project.
And that was our response to
Right.
to RBC. We just kind of said we would love to, but we can't.
But in that case, what would you like some commitment from us that we will either pay or assist you with paying the upfront costs that you weren't able to do? Is that in essence what you're asking?
Well, we haven't asked for anything, but if that were to be possible, then that would be a way that we could do the program.
One thing to keep in mind, under Moving Ohio Forward, there wasn't a requirement that the properties be acquired.
Right.
Okay. So under Neighborhood Initiative, the land bank actually is required to take title. So you've got all those records, those costs associated with that, and it's a reimbursement program. So I mean,
Meanwhile,
you
we
have
have
to
the
acquire
property.
it, you got to demo it, all on your dime, and then you submit reimbursement to the Neighborhood Initiative program, which is quite a bit different than Moving Ohio Forward.
So we really are parties to it. This all occurs after we have title to the property. Or does it?
Our agreement with CAN, for instance, is we will hold title to the property for the project period, which is 3 years. At the end of the project period, the property gets titled to the city of Canton. I mean, that was a very big point in the agreement, because we did not want to be, I don't think, we didn't want to be saddled with holding all these
But
projects.
in the meanwhile, we do own it.
We do own it for that 3-year period of time until that structure has been demolished. It's been targeted for demolition and abatement, asbestos.
But so the downside of it is, we get the property, and then you find out it's a $30,000 demolition project. So that really makes us interested.
And on top of that, a lot of the houses are structurally not sound, so if you do the asbestos survey and it comes up hot and we have to do abatement, if the structure were to get fire damaged or to just collapse, then you're looking at a lot larger, sometimes triple, quadruple the cost, because it has to be treated as whole house Rackham. So the asbestos contractor has to come in, and in order to abate, you have to wrap the whole house and take care of it. And I mean, for the city to have to do that for a home would be close to $60,000 for a normal-sized residence.
And keeping all of this in mind, demolitions aren't simply one of many things we're doing in Alliance. It is as important as anything else we're doing in terms of economic development. These derelict properties, and it's that way throughout urbanized Northeast Ohio. They're anchors on what we're trying to do in moving the community forward economically. It takes away from all the surrounding real estate. You know the story, but I just want to emphasize this is important. And I wish we had the money to fill the gap. But at this point, it's a bit of a risk.
Thank you, Joe. We have a representative from the city of Massillon.
Yeah, I mean, I can reiterate basically what was discussed with Alliance, except we're probably in a little worse shape financially, as you know. So, I mean, all the things that were discussed with regards to the issues Alliance has, we have to, and except we're probably in a little more difficult financial situation than Alliance is with regards to being a fiscal emergency. So, and, manpower and everything else that goes along with it.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Miller or Mr. Mazzola? Bob, is it your recommendation that what I'm getting from the discussion is that you're asking perhaps the board consider extending an amount of money, but at a limit, not to exceed a specific number?
Well, our model is Canton, the agreement that we have that was executed with Canton. And, Alliance and Massillon are a little bit different situation. I guess an option, and I'm not sure I would go as far as to make a recommendation at this point, would be to, if the land, again, from a public policy standpoint, does the land bank think that, hey, we can leverage the $25,000 per property, and there's some risk involved in terms, if these things go up to maybe $40,000, is it good public policy to leverage $15,000 in land bank money versus this $25,000 that can get reimbursed? I mean, I think that's the question we need to talk about. I mean, is that something we're willing to do? And if we are, I would probably recommend, hey, let's put a dollar amount so that folks, when Alliance and Massillon are doing their demos, that they've got an incentive maybe to you can probably say this one looks probably pretty good, and I don't really want to mess with this one because it's going to be really expensive. But if we put a dollar amount to say, hey, we'll give you, $50,000 towards demolitions and kind of front that money for them, maybe that would make some sense. I mean, again, I just throw that number out there. But I think it's a decision that the board needs to talk about. I mean, do we want to stay at the 25, or do we think it's a good expenditure of our land bank DTAC resources to leverage $25,000 in grant money per property, knowing that they may go over a little bit? I don't know.
How many properties do we anticipate would be demolished, purchased, acquired, and then demolished under this program?
The number of properties that were submitted in the grant, the majority are based in the city of Canton. I'm going to say there's about 5%. So 95% of the 180 are Canton, and the rest is Massillon and Alliance. You're thinking
20 or 30 properties? Maybe.
At most, I'd say maximum 20 properties with a minimum of 10. In the total sum of the 180 that we've submitted. That's what the initial grant was for. Mm-hmm. There's a round 2, which I'll talk about here in a minute or two, which is going to extend this program and on and on and on. And I think that's why Bob reached out to the cities to see if there's still interest in the program. It's clear that there is interest in the program, but it's a cost matter now. And FCLRC, if it puts up the funding, will get reimbursed up to $25,000 of the amounts, but we're seeing the asbestos come in higher, and perhaps there could be other unknowns that are in that structure, and you don't know until you get in there and start poking around. And I'm willing to entertain the idea of putting up the funds. We've done that with the Moving Ohio Forward program. I would just like to go back and review some of those higher cost items to see if we can get an average number or a better figure, which then the board understands that anything over that $25,000 figure we will not get reimbursed for. But I would not want to extend. I wouldn't want to extend it that far out.
I would be concerned about a blanket commitment. I mean,
right.
If $10,000 times 180 properties is $1.8 million, so obviously that's well beyond our capacity anyways.
Are these all single-family dwellings that we're talking about?
Residential structures.
So that could include an 8-unit apartment, for instance?
I
guess what I'm thinking about, there may be an easy way to pick the ones that are candidate, that we're fearful of going over.
Under Moving Ohio Forward, we took down some multi-unit structures. I don't think we're looking at that with neighborhood initiative. Because again, we're taking title to these properties, so that's a big, that's a whole different ballgame from moving Ohio forward.
This is something we need to take under consideration.
This
is
would be
not-
further.
Yeah, we don't need to make the decision today.
Yeah, I think Bob's just making the board aware that this is an issue that is going to have to be addressed in the very near future, and what is the board willing to consider in terms of a limit beyond the $25,000 figure, knowing that this is money that will not be reimbursed, but it is an investment in that particular community that is having difficulty meeting the cash flow.
And just a little, I guess, sidebar to this too. I don't think we have a lot, but when Canton did the neighborhood initiative application, we put a lot of work in to include areas really outside of the cities as eligible. So there will probably be some property, maybe Canton Township, Perry, that we'll be looking at doing the demolition on that, and we would probably bid that, under our agreement with the land bank. So again, it would be reimbursed up to $25,000, but it could go over. So we just, it's just a little different nuance to what Canton know.
Is this something worthy of a work session?
Couldn't hurt.
It's a big decision, and I don't.
Yeah.
And we also want to involve Lynn Carlone in this.
Yes.
Lynn has been integral in the Moving Ohio Forward program. She knows all the parcels, which we exceeded the costs. Of course, the board does too, but I'd have to go back through them. And
Let's have a report that we have.
I'd like to have the facts behind it, so we know.
We can set that up.
Yeah, go ahead, that'd be great.
Why don't we defer till we get a fifth board member?
Well, until we have the work session.
We need to get some.
Okay.
All right. Sarah, would you like to go into the side lot?
I'm going to do Moving Ohio Forward first and then side lot. The pink sheet is Moving Ohio Forward for subrecipient non-matched approved properties. The City of Alliance has added 5 additional properties, which will be made up with the DTAC funding, and asbestos surveys were completed, and the abatement can begin after their 10-day notice. Nothing has changed with the City of Canton or Plain Township, but with Perry Township, we submitted to the state for reimbursement their 3 demolitions, which, including soft costs, came to about $19,452. For non-subrecipients, 43 demolitions were completed, submitted, and reimbursed to the AG's office. And then we have 2 properties that the asbestos evaluations just came back on, and those are out to bid. The bids for those 2 additional properties, one in East Canton and one in Waynesburg, are due on the 29th. And then we'll award based on those when those bids come back in. For the match properties, for subrecipients, the City of Alliance, Perry, and Plain have kind of been the same here, but the City of Canton, we've gotten 298 demolitions completed, submitted, and reimbursed to the AG's office, including soft costs. The total is $1,950,000. Reimbursed to date is $975,068. There are additional packets that we're processing to be submitted to the AG's office. I have about almost 20 Canton packets in my office that we're putting together to be submitted. So a total MOF grant was $2.3 million. Total reimbursement submissions to date, $1,901,916. A balance available to submit is $441,698. And then you can see the non-match and match funding down at the very bottom. Those haven't really changed since last month.
Yeah, I'll just add, we didn't spend all of it, but they really worked very hard, and I'll credit them.
And we're still getting
a lot of demolitions,
packets.
and there's still some pending.
We have till September, correct?
The 30th of September, yeah.
So September 30th, is that the cutoff?
That's 30. Yeah, that's it.
And that was the second, that was the extent,
Third,
the
yeah.
third, the third extension. Oh, that's right.
So credit to AG DeWine and the group down there. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, and then we'll move on to the green slip side lot update. I'm going to kind of jump around here. The total submitted applications received to date is 601. And of those, 484 of those applications are within the city of Canton, about 37 and 38 in Alliance and Massillon. And then you can see the others that are, 1 and 2 here and there throughout the balance of the county to make up those 601 applications. And that, I just want to kind of separate that the 601 applications are not for 601 separate parcels necessarily. There have been some that are, multiple applicants have applied for the same parcel. So there's about 500 lots that are being applied for of the 601 applications. And then of those, there's 281 that are in some form of a pending status process, throughout the process. 110 of those have been denied for ineligibility under the program, and then 210 have been approved and then are also moving forward. Of those 210, there have been 169 that are in the foreclosure process, are pending deposit for the application, or have completed the foreclosure process. And I have about 12 that are being prepared for transfer, and 7 I'm waiting on easement restrictions from the city of Canton, and then those will be prepared for transfer. And to date, we've transferred 22 lots, so it's slowly climbing the number of lots that we're transferring.
Any questions for Sarah?
Alex, I'm sorry. I think Dave wanted to give a little update on the back end of the Neighborhood Initiative Program as far as
Mr. Dorley?
his activities.
Not necessarily my activities, but I think it's important that the board know where we stand. As you well know, we were awarded $4.3 million, meaning the land bank, through the efforts of the city of Canton, which I know Alex used the figure 180, but we're actually targeting 169 properties as of now. Before the end of March of 2015, 85 of those properties must be titled in the name of the land bank, with the balance of those properties being titled by September of 2015. To date, as of Wednesday of last week, 22 properties had been submitted through the Treasurer's Office to the Prosecutor's Office to begin the actual process of foreclosure. These would be tax delinquent properties, and they will go through a board of revision process. There's 2 ways that it can happen. One would be through a court foreclosure process, or the board of revisions. Assistant Prosecutor John Anthony, who's very, very good, by the way, has chosen to do them through the board of revision. So to date, he's got 22. And I know later in your agenda you have NIP Round 2 funding. I don't know if you want me to just dovetail into that now. But the original NIP program was a $60 million program, of which $48 million was committed to the various land banks during Phase 1 funding, of which we received 4.3. Cuyahoga County received a bundle, and there were a lot of others throughout the state likewise. There were a couple land banks that weren't in existence during Phase 1 that are now in existence that have applied for funding, and there's $12 million left. They're going to receive their fair share. Again, Cuyahoga County will receive theirs. I mean, they're the big dog in the room, so they'll receive theirs. And based on our performance under Phase 1, we are eligible to receive up to another $500,000. The City of Canton has indicated that they would like to go forward with that. They're putting together the application process. But one of the things that has to happen is that we have to have titled in the land bank's name prior to the submission on July 31st. So we're 10 days away from having to have that done. 10% of those properties, which basically is 17 properties. Tom may be able to speak better on this, but they've engaged an agent to work on behalf of the city who has targeted properties that will be transferred to the land bank hopefully this week, actually hopefully starting this afternoon. I have a meeting with that agent at 1 o'clock, and then we'll be seeing Alex later in the afternoon, hopefully if all the paperwork's in order, to get 20 properties transferred either by a direct sale process or a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And it looks like at the moment 16 of them will be deed in lieu of foreclosures. With the 4, we're targeting 20 right now, the 4 being direct purchases. Through the NIP program, $5,000 is allotted toward the actual acquisition of properties, but in no way, shape, or form can any of those properties be tax delinquent. We're not allowed to use any of this money to pay tax delinquencies. So that's just a little update that I think from month to month you guys need to be aware of where we're at in the entire process. Hopefully August, September we'll have more acquired. To just go back though a little bit on the properties as it relates to Maslin and Alliance. The original pipeline that was submitted with the grant was upwards of 400 properties. In that pipeline, there was approximately 50 properties that were submitted on behalf of Maslin and 10 or more on behalf of Alliance in their target areas. From Maslin already, we received requests to actually do 14 properties that they've actually would be ready to go forward with, depending on whether or not they have the staff to be able to do it, but also upon execution of a contract with them. So we're actually holding some properties that we can move forward with at some point, but really right now the entire program is being driven by the city of Canton.
What do we need to get done on those, on Maslin's properties, for example?
It's the funding issue that you spoke of earlier.
We have a work session.
And that can be done after the work session. So I'm just saying we're ready to go, they're ready to go. It's just a matter of that funding issue from us. But we do have, again, till September 2015 to acquire 169 properties. Questions?
It's been fun, hasn't it, Dave?
It's been a ball.
Every week we have a conference call.
And I should say that Alex has really done a great job with these conference calls on Wednesdays because it really keeps the program from becoming stale. It's really pushing it to the direction that we need to, because otherwise we could go a month and see nothing happen. But every week we're seeing that we're kind of like taking baby steps here, but it'll work, and it's going to work, and it's going to be a great program when it's all said and done.
Kind of like moving Stark County forward.
Slowly, one property at a time.
We like it. It's like the elephant, one bite at a time.
Are we staying on your schedule that we
Yes.
talked about?
They've done very well. Dave made the comment, I think both Dave and John made the comment that the last conference meetings where we thought we would be in July. And
We were hoping to be in May, but realistically we thought we'd be in July. So.
Well, I think the critical path item, and we'll know, because the round 2 funding is due July 31st, and we have to have title to 10, as Dave said, 10% of those properties that we represented. So that's where the proof will be, you know what I mean? So and if we don't have that, then we can't apply. So, and it's all being driven by Canton, and they're working hard at it. It's challenging. So.
And the other item too, and they didn't go into this, the guidelines for this program keep changing.
Right.
Yeah.
It is a
The
very,
taxes, for instance.
very difficult to
meet a goal when all of a sudden the rules change and you're so far into the program, so you got to take a step back.
And to give a specific example, Canton was working under the premise that the back taxes were eligible costs out of that first $5,000, and the Treasury Department changed the rules a month ago. It was eligible, and then it wasn't, and those are the type of challenges.
Are they ultimately eligible, though, for part of the $25,000?
No.
They're not.
Cannot.
Can you pay, could they pay off the back taxes and then put them in the program?
They're
make them eligible.
They won't get reimbursed.
But they're not eligible to be
Yeah,
reimbursed.
not eligible for reimbursement, but to get them into the program.
They could.
Yeah, but it can't be on the statement, whether it's the statement. the closing statement, remember?
Oh, the HUD-1 statement. Yeah, it can't show on the real estate closing statement at all. I mean, if the landowner wished to come in ahead of closing and pay them, that would be one thing. And the city of Canton had targeted upwards of 60 properties that they were going to do a direct transfer through a sale process of around $3,000, $3,200 per property. Again, you can spend for acquisition cost up to $5,000 on these. And the moment that the rules changed, they lost a great bulk of these properties because they were delinquent with taxes and assessments.
But ultimately, you can still do that, can't you? If the land bank would file a tax foreclosure action, or if Alex does it at the land bank's request, then the Board of Revision would order the taxes abated.
Correct, and that's what's happened, and that's why there's 22 properties now pending. They had to back up, take the properties that were going to be a direct transfer, which would have occurred prior to the end of July, which would have made the whole process a lot easier. And now through the Board of Revision process, which can take anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 months, which were well within the March 31st deadline of next year on the 85 properties, but they threw us a curveball. We hit it.
But you can still take a deed, if the land bank takes a deed in lieu, and there's no other, and gets clear title, the auditor can still abate the taxes.
Well, exactly, and that's where the 16 properties are coming in today. I had a conversation with Robert Murphy last week. I haven't seen my email yet this morning, but I did not work Friday. He was going to transfer over to me a packet of information for my review prior to my meeting at 1 o'clock this afternoon. The language of the statute requires that the Stark County Auditor, as an agent of the state of Ohio, sign off on these. Now, that doesn't mean the taxes are immediately wiped off, but there is a process once they're in the land bank's name that the land bank can then have those taxes abated. And as you well know, by law, we do not pay taxes on property. So it's a process. You're more than welcome to stop by any time.
Wednesdays at 3.
Yes.
Any questions for Dave?
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave, for the update. Thanks, Bob. This will go into our public speaks.
You know what else? Can we get an update from Tom Burns on
Certainly.
His hopes for getting these 17 done by the 31st? Since that
Well, I was out of the office last week, and Dave's really more on top of this than I am, but I know that Mike Boylan, who is handling these, the week before, he was supposed to submit 2. They were going to fine-tune them, and how did those go, Alec?
They were fine.
Yeah, he submitted them to me last Thursday. I looked them over, and he immediately walked them over to Alex for signature, and they were good.
And so then the paperwork on the others was ready to go. So this is moving pretty fast.
Yep.
We're on schedule.
Optimistic you get the 17 done, I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
17 for the
Today.
31st?
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll
so-
have.
Oh, you think this
I
is
think
gonna
you'll have
happen?
20 at when it's
Yeah,
all
we're
said
looking
and done.
for 20.
Okay, by the 31st, okay.
Today.
Now,
Okay.
there is one other requirement, and we'll talk about that later today too. This whole entire program is driven through the mortgage foreclosure crisis from before. So all of these properties, once they're titled in the land bank's name, have to have a mortgage associated with them. And so there's going to be a $100 mortgage, or not mortgage, I'm sorry, it's not a mortgage. It's an obligation. It does not have to be recorded, so I misspoke there. And so there will be an obligation from the land bank for $100 that deals with our stockpile here, going out and evaluating them for deconstruction purposes.
Yeah, just I'm glad you brought that up. The stockpile, I think most of you are familiar. It's a nonprofit, Stark County Regional Planning Services, Inc. At our last board meeting, I got approval to put a note on these properties, and for $100, we'll basically send the director out to evaluate the properties for deconstruction. So there's some nexus between, the dollar amount and some service being provided. It's a requirement of the Treasury Department, so that's kind of an FYI.
And not to confuse the board, this is not the mortgage note that ultimately gets put on the property for 3 years. This is the initial step that we have to take in getting title to the property and making sure that
If I could just add a little aside there, we keep talking about this 3-year requirement that the property has to be titled in the land bank's name. There are certain circumstances wherein the land bank has the ability to transfer their property within that 3-year period, and one of the eligible transfers would be to a side lot program. So if these do qualify for side lots, and I believe most of them will, or a lot of them will, then we won't be holding them that 3-year period. And OFA, the Ohio Housing Finance Agency, will sign off on that, release their mortgage, and so we will not own that property 3 years. So we don't have the maintenance. We don't have the maintenance worries as it relates to that.
Any further questions for Dave? Or we'll go into our public speaks portion at this time. We do have Mr. Long representing Kevin Stewart.
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to thank this board for deferring this matter until this meeting today. This is about a parcel of land that's already been foreclosed upon in the 900 block of McKinley Avenue, pretty close to downtown Canton. As you said, I represent Mr. Stewart. I sent a letter to this board just about a month ago. Seeing the board, I bet you all read it already, so I don't want to review it in view of your busy agenda this morning. However, I just want to mention that Mr. Stewart does own, he owns 2 parcels which are adjacent, but he owns the other parcel on the other side of this property that's just across from a small, very narrow street, we'll call it, that has 5 units. His purpose, should the lot go to him, is to provide some parking for those 3 properties where I think 2 live in one, 5 in the other, and I don't remember the one kind of on the back, 4 units in the other one, and get those people parking in that space rather than on the city streets because there is no parking. He's also been mowing this thing for 10 years now. So obviously he's maintained the property. He has quite a number of properties very close to there. And we would respectfully, this is a multi-applicant situation here, so we're asking that parcel be awarded to him. And Mr. Stewart is here. When we're done here, you have any questions? Thank you.
Warren, have you talked with anybody at the RPC about coming up, working something out? The other applicants are hubs, I believe.
Yes,
And they are present. They are present.
Are you there?
Yes. Not at this point, but should that come up, following the guidelines that you've already adopted, we're certainly willing to talk.
If I may add,
Please.
in March of 2013, Beverly and Glenn Hupp made application for the exact same lot of which Mr. Sowers just referred. His client applied for this property in May of 2013. Those dates are really irrelevant in terms of the awarding of a property in the side lot program. Both have gone through the process, and that process, and actually I should have Maureen talk about the process, except I think you're all pretty familiar with it. It goes through a number of steps within the city of Canton for review, and then eventually is signed off on by the ward councilman. In this case, that would be Thomas West. The first parcel to go, or the first applicant to go through was the Hupps, and they were approved. The second applicant to go through was Mr. Stewart, and he was approved also, but a comment was made per the councilman that the approval was pending the Hupps and Stewarts agreeing to split the parcel. And if you look at the transfer procedure, when both properties, basically both applicants qualify, then the next step in the process would be to look at a potential split of the property. So right now the property is titled in the land bank's name, subject to the decision that you make today as to what to do with it. And my suggestion would be that it be split. It be split at the cost, not of the land bank, but of the applicants, the Hupps and the Stewarts, and then that the property then be titled in their respective names. Bob and I went out and visited the property at some point. It is a corner property at the corner of Herbert and McKinley. These are, for lack of a better term, substandard lots. The Hupps in their application had indicated they wished to use it for a side yard. While Beverly and Glenn Hupp applied as the landowners, their daughter actually lives in the property with her children. When we went out there, we actually noticed that there was a trampoline on the property in question. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it appears that this property is just a perfect property to actually split it. I think it would serve both their needs. It would give a side lot for use for the Hupps, and it also give Mr. Stewart the ability to use some for parking.
Are you suggesting that we should act on this matter? Because very frankly, my attitude would be everybody's together in the room. Let's do the lawyer-like thing, and that is sit down and say work it out without our coercive intervention. But you're the lawyer in the matter, so I won't impose that on you.
You may impose anything you would like, sir. The Hupps, I had a phone conversation last week from attorney Laura Gutris, who had indicated at that time that she was representing the Hupps in furtherance of their application. She is not present today. I know the Hupps are. It is possible that we could all sit down and work it out at some point, but since I have actually spoken with Attorney Gutris, I think it would be improper for me to actually work something out without her being present.
Right.
I think that would be almost an ethical violation.
Why don't you call Lori and see if, and Lauren, and let's fix a time, and I'd be glad to come and I can explain to all of you. And this, when it was initiated, of course, this was my business, and if in case anybody is the least bit interested, I'll tell you exactly what happened. The Hupps sent in their application, and I looked, and I could see from the auditor's records that the tax mailing address for the owner was that very address. So I leaped to the conclusion that they were residents, because who in his right mind has a tax bill sent to a tenant? Doesn't happen in this world. I think Mr. Leonard would confirm that too. And so I jumped to the conclusion, that turned out to be erroneous. The Hupps would clearly have had a priority under our guidelines had they been the resident owners. Turns out they're not the resident owners, it's their daughter that's the resident owners. So I processed the application through to the end, and then of course Mr. Sowers, you raise a very valid point, apparently was not resolvable on that issue. So my apologies to both of you for that having happened, but I really would prefer, frankly, to defer the matter until the Hupps can join with their counsel and meet and try to resolve it.
Would you just inquire of the Hupps right now if Attorney Gutris is still representing?
Yeah, let's do that. Is it Beverly?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Does Lori Gutris still represent you?
She does.
How about if you get on the phone while you're here and get a time convenient to Mr. Sowers to meet, and I'd be glad if it can assist. I'd be glad to be there. I don't need to be there, I don't think.
Would you want it done this week or next week? What do you want me to tell her?
Well, just
we can go into my office and make that phone
yeah,
call.
just let's wait till after the meeting, and
then.
then Mr. Sowers and you can talk together about that.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you both for coming in.
Okay. In regard to, in this case, it'd be a reappointment of our municipal representative, Lem Green, to a two-year term. Mr. Green's resolution has come forth from the City of Canton. They have provided us with their informal resolution from the Council of the Whole, appointing him to another two-year term.
Move the reappointment of Mr. Green.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of said motion say aye. Aye.
I defer.
Welcome back. All right, in regards to our appointment for the township representative, I have not received any letters as of yet, but I do know that the Township Association has been made aware. Member Hawes submitted that information at his last meeting with them. Hopefully, we will get some names forthcoming. At this point in time, I do not want to release any speculative information on who might be presenting a interest in that particular position. As such, we'll move into our April invoice for RPC in the amount of $5,961.83.
Move to approve.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of said motion to approve,
Aye.
say aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Motion carries. In regard to the May invoice for RPC in the amount of $6,973.23.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of said
Aye.
motion say aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Motion carries. Regard to the PJR invoices for Phil Shondell in the amount of $4,400.
I move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of said motion say aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Motion carries. In regard to the FER title agency invoices in the amount of $3,200.
So moved.
Been moved,
Second.
seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of said motion say aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Motion carries. In regard to the clerk of court BOR hearing invoices in the amount of $5,503.62.
So moved.
It's been moved,
Second.
seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of said motion say aye.
Aye.
Against, same sign. Motion carries. In regard to the sheriff office deed fees of $600.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of said motion say aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Motion carries. In regard to the press news invoices, the amount of $2,944.50.
So moved.
It's
Second.
been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of said motion say aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Motion carries. In regard to a refund of a $100 fee for parcel number 1306796.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of said motion say aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Motion carries. I did include in the packet the SCLRC and the City of Canton OFA NIP contract for your review. Mr. Thorley did review this briefly. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try and entertain them. We do have Attorney Burns in the room as well, but this was the initial contract that was submitted at our last meeting. It was a draft at that time, and ultimately it was submitted to Canton for their approval, and council did approve it. We've approved it. Just wanted to make sure everybody saw the finalized contract. Last item on the agenda is the OFA NIP Round 2 funding. This is an application which is due on 31st of July. Bob now spoke to this matter. We expect to file this hopefully early part of next week. At the latest would be July 31st by 5 p.m. But it appears that we're on track, and we'll know by 1 p.m. today if we have 20 properties under our control. So $500,000 is the anticipated amount that we will receive. It could be more, but at this point in time, we'll plan on the $500,000. That would equate to approximately 20 properties. I did include also a copy of a letter that was requested from Thriving Communities Institute that the mayors, and in this case I had Bob now submit on behalf of the Land Bank, a letter to Jeff Graber, counsel to the Assistant Attorney General, Civil Division, Department of Justice. This is in regards to the Bank of America pending agreement. This is the mortgage foreclosure settlement, and this hopefully will urge them to come to an agreement. And I did see late last week that they have come into some type of agreement, and I think we'll start to see more information coming forth, and hopefully we'll find out if these funds will be available for further demolition or rehabilitation. So I'm sure we'll see some type of grant funding become available. The City of Canton, City of Alliance, and Stark County Regional Planning did submit letters on behalf of the board. I did have a letter or an email sent to the mayor and Maslin, but I have not had a response. Anything further to come before the board at this time? Bob?
One short item.
Sure.
I have the survey to pass out.
Janet gets one.
It's as short as I can make it. If you want to return it, please. This is about where we want to move forward.
Are you going?
So just inter-office it to me if you desire. But as I said, I don't want to dwell on it. But there's a lot of capabilities of the land bank, and with the various grant programs that we've been administering, it's really been a demolition program, and that's certainly important. But that's only a piece of the pie, so to speak. And I think we need to, within maybe the context of a work session, think about where we want to be in the medium and longer term versus just kind of dealing with these things as they come up. And so that's kind of the idea with the survey. So
When would you like the survey returned?
whenever you just inter-office it back to me. I don't think it's not a magic bullet by any stretch, but it does give us some sense that of what direction you guys want to go. And there's a mission statement, a couple mission statements we can look at from other land banks, and then we'll obviously have to schedule a work session to talk about the neighborhood initiative program, and that might be a good context to brainstorm a little bit. And the other thing is, too, we probably want to have our 5th board member on board, I think, before we, really spend a lot of time on it. So.
What's our next meeting?
Our next meeting is slated for August 18th, 2014. I anticipate it will still be here at RPC going forward. It does not have to be at 8:30 in the morning on Monday morning. It can be whatever time is convenient for the board members, but this is generally the 3rd Monday of the month that we've picked, unless there's a holiday, in which case it then would get moved to a Tuesday. The work session, I'm going to leave up to Mr. Now to find a convenient time that we can all sit down, and hopefully I will have word and interest in writing from the prospective township representative by that time.
Yeah, and I would think that any time change for these meetings will wait till the 5th.
The member, correct. Very good. Thank you all very much.
Move to adjourn.
Move in second at all those.